These are some of the most iconic characters in the video game history: Pac-Man and Super Mario. 40 years ago, people were buying them by the millions, just like Sony TVs, Walkman players, Canon, Nikon, Fuji cameras, brand new Nissan and Toyota cars, and Nintendo game consoles. You've probably guessed it. All of this comes from Japan. The 80s. Japan's economy growing so fast that some folks are convinced give it another 10 years and they'll catch up with or even overtake America. But then something goes wrong. Instead of Japan, it's China takes the lead. Toshiba computers get replaced by Apple, Sony TVs by Korean Samsungs. What was supposed to be an economic miracle turns into 30 years of economic stagnation. The population starts shrinking and aging, and those who invested in Japanese stocks back in late 80s, yeah, they still haven't seen their money back. So why didn't Japan become the global leader it seemed destined to be? Why did it lose its edge? And does the country still have a future? Here's the current list of the top 10 most valuable companies in the world. 8 out of 10 American. Now take a look at the top 10 from 40 years ago. 8 out of 10 were Japanese. That's 1989. The country is riding high. Banks are practically handing out money. You can get a loan at just 2.5%. And mortgages? They go up to 100 years. Japanese millionaires are living large and setting records left and right. Someone buys the most expensive diamond in the world for $6.5 million. A rare book for $6 million, and Van Gogh's sunflowers, they go to the land of rising sun for jaw-dropping $40 million. Things go so well that in 1989, Sony buys the entire American film company Columbia Pictures for $3.5 billion. Inside Japan, prices for everything basically astronomical. Just to give you an idea, in Tokyo's Ginza district, 1 square meter of real estate hits $1 million. Not a whole apartment, just 1 square meter. So how did they end up living this sweet life? To figure it out, we have to rewind a couple of decades. Back then, Japan is soaking up Western technology like a sponge, not for free, of course. So how does that work? Well, take the American giant DuPont, for example. In the early 20th century, they're pouring money into research, trying to invent a promising new material. Eventually, they come up with something super useful: nylon. Guys, in case you didn't know, nylon is used to make women's tights, toothbrushes, tough parachutes, and even that American flag sticking out on the moon. Yep. Nylon. DuPont spends 11 years and around $20 million on that research. So what does the Japanese company Toray do? Instead of spending 11 years and $20 million, they just paid DuPont $7.5 million for the patent and go on to make at least $90 million producing and selling nylon to the world. That's pretty much how the rest of the Japanese companies roll too. They go on a patent and license shopping spree, mostly from America. Over 20 years, they buy 50,000 such technology licenses. They start making stuff in Japan, tweak the tech until it's actually better than they originally bought. And eventually, Japan floods the world with cheap electronics, optics, cameras, TVs, you name it. One image says it all. The founder of Panasonic, surrounded by everything his company is making and selling at the time. The scale is mind-blowing. So what suddenly goes wrong? Let's dig into data. What cars are topping the sales charts in the United States? In 70s, it's all American. Ford, Chevy, Pontiac, Dodge, maybe a bit of Volkswagen. Fast forward 15 years, the top spots are still Ford and Chevy. But guess who's third? Toyota. And with every year, more and more Japanese cars are cracking the top 10. Same goes for Japanese electronics and gadgets in general. At that point, Japan is basically what China was about 10-15 years ago. The global factory for everything. But eventually, the West starts getting nervous. And not because they don't like buying cheap Japanese stuff, they fine with that for years. The real issue is that local producers are losing the competition year after year. which means people in the United States start losing jobs. Just look at what happens in 1982. Some Americans in protest start smashing Japanese cars. They ask their neighbors to buy American. And here's where it gets tricky. For decades, the United States has been selling tech and pumping Japan with money, all to make sure that Japan doesn't suddenly turn communist. China is right next door, after all, and for a long time everyone's okay with that. But the moment it stops being beneficial for America, everything changed. Just listen to President Reagan in September 1985, tearing apart all those previously profitable trade relationships.
When governments permit counterfeiting or copying of American products, it is stealing our future, and it is no longer free trade.
Not a big surprise that the very day before that speech, free trade, at least for Japan, basically ends.
It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Albert. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible.
In September 1985, at New York's Plaza Hotel, yep, the same one where they filmed Home Alone 2 later, representatives from the United States, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, and of course Japan, agreed to tweak currency exchange rates to make international trade easier for everyone. What does that mean? Well, imagine this. The dollar is super strong at the time. On the one hand, great, Americans can buy all sorts of stuff abroad from Japan or Germany. But on the other hand, it becomes harder to sell American-made products. Why would anyone buy local when the imports are cheaper? And that's how you get a trade imbalance, buying more than you're selling. Not a good look for any economy. There are two options: either weaken the dollar or slap import tariffs on stuff like Japanese goods so that American manufacturers don't go out of business. So they strike a deal and devalue the dollar. That way American goods became more competitive. But here's the twist. The Japanese yen shoots up way more faster and higher than anyone expected. And suddenly nobody's lining up to buy Japanese TVs, cameras and cars anymore. They're just not cheap anymore. But the Japanese, they don't seem to mind. Their yen is on fire. Wealthy folks go on shopping sprees and start snapping up American film studios. You remember Sony buying Columbia Pictures. They even hire Hollywood stars like Schwarzenegger to appear in weird Japanese commercials. 5 years into this financial boom, Japan's economy swells up like a bubble and then bursts hard. And so begins what they call the lost decades. That's when zombie companies start appearing. Think of a retail chain like Walmart or Tesco's. Obviously, you need them. They sell food, employ hundreds of thousands of people, keep families afloat. But now imagine one of those chains is drowning in $70 billion of debt. Should the country just let it die? The Japanese government decides to bail out local supermarket chains with easy, low-interest loans. They don't want people losing jobs or banks losing their money. Closing them down would cause a whole mess. And the zombie bit, that's exactly what these companies are. Not dead, but not really alive either. Every yen they earn goes straight to debt payments. They're not growing, not innovating. And if it were just one or two of them, fine. But in 2000, 1 out of every 3 companies in Japan is a zombie. But why is that even now? Every time you read about Japan, there are still articles saying the country hasn't fully recovered from that old crisis, that everything's still kind of stuck. Well, hold on, is it really that bad? Just look at how great Tokyo looks. Sony and Canon cameras, Toyota, Honda, Nissan cars, they're all still here. So here is the big question. Over the last 30 years, has Japan launched any new world-famous tech company that broken through with big, bold ideas? What do I mean by that? Let's look again at the list of the world's most valuable companies. They're right there, in your pocket, on your desk. Apple and Microsoft start booming right after 1985. Google, Amazon, Facebook blow up in 2000s. Tesla shows up in tens. How many Chinese companies made the list? Alibaba's there, even South Korea's Samsung. And they used to buy TVs from Japan, from a company like Sanyo, and just assemble them in Korea.
So come along and watch Japan.
And where are the Japanese companies in the top 100? Just one. Toyota. And that's exactly why people keep calling these years the lost decades. So what does the future hold for the country? It's complicated. On the one hand, people in Japan live incredibly long. Life expectancy, along with Hong Kong, is the highest in the world, 85 years. But here's the issue. Japan has way too many people over 65. That's 35 million people, a third the population, and the number of kids has been falling for 40 years straight. That could lead not just to zombie companies, but to a zombie country, where the younger generation isn't building a future, but just working to support millions of elderly. And it's already showing. Japan has this problem called karoshi, death from overwork. Every year, the government officially confirms at least 200 such cases. On average, Japanese workers clock in 100 hours of overtime per month, barely use half their vacation days. And for many young couples, it's easier to get a dog than have a child. It's just too expensive. Still, I'm sure Japan will keep moving forward. Some countries are still miles away from reaching Japan's level of tech and infrastructure. But you've got to wonder, could Japan have avoided the crash? To answer that, let's look at today's China, the second largest economy in the world, also started by flooding the market with cheap goods. Then they upgraded. Now their stuff is better than what they used to buy. Well, or sometimes steal from others. But here's the key difference. Japan's point of no return wasn't the crazy speculation at the end of 80s. That was a symptom, not the disease. The real problem started with that Plaza Hotel agreement. That's when everything began to fall apart. Could Japan have said no, walked away from that deal, told the United States to back off, even though the Americans had the most to gain from that agreement? Unlikely. Back then, Tokyo was scared of losing access to American market, worried about tariffs, and wanted to stay under Washington's protection. Either way, the United States could have just slapped steep tariffs on Japanese goods, and boom, trade war. Sounds familiar, right? China today, neck deep in tariffs and trade war, but they're still in control of their currency and their economy. Feels like they might just avoid Japan's fate. What do you think? Thank you. Good night.